The soft rotor is a lie we tell ourselves. It is a vehicle class defined by a paradox. As drivers migrate to cities, they demand vehicles that project the capability to leave them. For decades, Subaru owners have attempted to bridge this gap in the garage. They bolt on strut spacers, skid plates, and larger tires, trying to force a commuter car to be a truck. The 2026 Forester Wilderness exists to kill the aftermarket modification. Subaru built this vehicle from the ground up not to compete with the Toyota RAV4, but to solve the engineering failures of the home mechanic. When you lift a standard Forester in your driveway, you break the car. You alter the suspension geometry without updating the software. Your eyesight cameras aim too high. Your vehicle dynamics control miscalculates the center of gravity. The Wilderness solves this through integration. The 9.3-inch ground clearance isn't just a lift kit. It is hard-coded into the VDC algorithms. The traction control anticipates the specific grip coefficient of the Yokohama Geolandar tires and the extended droop travel of the shocks. This is the thesis of the 2026 model. A factory engineer can calibrate what a garage mechanic can only bolt on. But does this digital integration actually translate to mechanical grip when the mud gets deep? To answer that, we have to look at the chassis. In the world of body-on-frame trucks, chassis flex is a feature. A twisting frame acts as a secondary suspension, helping to keep tires on the ground. In a unibody crossover, flex is a failure. Subaru prioritized extreme torsional rigidity in the 2026 global platform because, with independent suspension, every degree of body twist is a degree of lost traction. When a unibody vehicle flexes under cross-axle load, the suspension geometry distorts. More critically, the sensors that drive the traction control system receive corrupted data. The consequence of this rigidity is the tripod phenomenon. When you push the Forester into a severe cross-axle ditch, it will readily lift a rear wheel into the air. To the untrained eye, this looks like a failure of suspension travel. To an engineer, it is a success of platform stiffness. By keeping the chassis inert, the vehicle ensures that the three tires remaining on the ground maintain a predictable contact patch. This allows the traction control computer to solve the physics equation instantly. If the body were twisting, the weight transfer would be erratic, confusing the yaw sensors and delaying the brake locking intervention. This rigid platform supports the vehicle's primary geometric defense, 9.3 inches of ground clearance. Subaru achieved this through longer coil springs and revised shock absorbers that increase both bump and droop travel. They did not simply add spacers, they expanded the suspension's working range. The outcome is dynamic clearance. In field testing against the Mazda CX-50, which sits at 8.6 inches, the Mazda consistently drags its belly pan on the crown of deep ruts. The Forester clears them. This prevents high centering, a state where the vehicle rests on its chassis with wheels spinning helplessly. A fatal condition for a solo traveler. However, this architecture accepts a hard geometric limit: the approach angle. The 2026 Wilderness achieves a 23.5-degree approach angle. While this is an improvement over the standard model, it is mechanically inferior to the Jeep Compass Trailhawk's 30.4 degrees. This is not an oversight, it is a packaging constraint. The longitudinal mounting of the Boxer engine pushes the engine block forward of the front axle. Combined with pedestrian crash safety standards, this necessitates a long front overhang. Subaru accepted this trade-off. They cannot shorten the nose without abandoning the Boxer engine layout or compromising crash safety. Consequently, while the Forester dominates in deep mud ruts, it cannot attack vertical rock steps without driving the front bumper into the granite. The standard skid plate is an aluminum hybrid alloy designed for occasional deflections, not the sustained abrasion of rock crawling. This is the boundary of the platform. If your use case involves dry rock steps taller than 20 inches, the unibody geometry has already made the decision for you. Stop. In the off-road community, the continuously variable transmission, CVT, is viewed as a disposable component. It relies on friction between a steel chain and smooth cones, rather than the mechanical engagement of gear teeth. Subaru retained the CVT for the Wilderness not to cut costs, but because a torque converter allows for infinite crawl ratios that a traditional automatic cannot replicate without a transfer case. The 2026 Wilderness utilizes a high-torque variant of the linear-tronic transmission. Crucially, engineers swapped the standard differential gearing for a 4.11 to 1 final drive ratio. This is numerically higher than the standard Forester's 3.70 ratio. This gearing change is the mechanical equivalent of a virtual low range. By shortening the final drive, Subaru mechanically multiplies the torque at the wheels before the engine even reaches its peak output. On the trail, this allows the vehicle to creep at 3 miles per hour with the engine spinning at 2,500 RPM, right in the meat of the torque curve without surging. A traditional automatic would constantly hunt between a first and second gear in this scenario. However, this system accepts a hard limit, the stall protection protocol. In a traditional 4x4, if you are pinned against a rock, you can rev the engine until the tires smoke or the drive shaft snaps. The Forester will not allow this. During our stall test on a 26-degree incline, when the resistance of the obstacle exceeded the clamping force of the transmission cones, the computer cut the throttle. Even with the pedal floored, the engine RPMs held steady, and the wheels refused to turn. This is not a malfunction, it is a fuse. The transmission control unit calculates that if it allows more torque, the chain will slip, scoring the cones and destroying the transmission. It chooses to strand you rather than destroy the gearbox. This is the ultimate consequence of the CVT. You cannot power through a stuck scenario. You must back up and use momentum. To mitigate heat, the killer of CVTs, Subaru integrated an air-to-oil heat exchanger, doubling the towing capacity to 3,500 pounds. More importantly, this cooler solves the sand overheat issue that plagued previous generations. In deep sand, where high RPMs and low speeds usually boil transmission fluid, the 2026 model maintains thermal equilibrium. You can drive until the fuel tank is empty, not until the dashboard light turns red. The Forester Wilderness has no locking differentials. It has open differentials front and rear. If you lift one wheel in a standard vehicle, all power flows to the path of least resistance, the air, and you stop moving. Subaru solves this with the digital locker, known as X mode. This is not a passive traction control system that waits for a slip. It is predictive. The heart of the system is the multi-plate transfer clutch, MPTC. In the Wilderness trim, when the inclinometer detects a slope and the steering angle is straight, the MPTC proactively locks the front-to-rear torque split to 50-50 before any wheel slips. The driver's input determines the algorithm's aggression. In snow/dirt mode, the system prioritizes grip. It flattens the throttle curve. 50% pedal travel equals 20% throttle opening, preventing accidental surges. It aggressively clamps the brake on any spinning wheel, forcing torque to the tire with traction. In deep snow/mud mode, the priority flips to momentum. This mode disables the traction control engine cut. In deep mud, a spinning tire acts as a centrifuge, self-cleaning the tread blocks. If the computer cut power to stop the spin, as it does in standard street cars, the tread would pack with mud, becoming a slick, and the vehicle would sink. By allowing controlled chaos, the algorithm lets the driver redline the engine to swim through non-Newtonian fluids that would trap a more polite traction system. The primary failure point of the 2026 Forester Wilderness is not the CVT, it is the rubber. Subaru fitted Yokohama Geolandar A/T tires to legitimize the Wilderness badge. They accepted a trade-off: on-road silence for off-road compromise. The void ratio, the space between tread blocks, is too narrow for cohesive soil. In our testing, the deep snow/mud mode spun the tires fast enough to clean light silt, but thick clay packed the tread instantly. Once the voids are full, the tire becomes a slick. At that point, the sophisticated AWD system is useless because 0 multiplied by 4 is still 0. If you intend to drive in clay, the stock tires are a liability. You must upgrade to a tire with a wider void ratio, but doing so introduces road drone that penetrates the cabin at highway speeds. But the most critical engineering oversight is the rear recovery point. If you slide off a trail nose first, you must be pulled out backward. The 2026 Wilderness provides a screw-in eyelet that threads into the unibody. This is a shipping tie-down, not a recovery point. It is rated for a static pull on flat asphalt, not the dynamic shock load of a kinetic rope yanking a 3,600-pound vehicle out of suction mud. Subaru omitted a frame-mounted rear hitch or rated tow hook to save weight and crash structure complexity. The consequence is dangerous. If you get truly stuck, you are forced to attach recovery gear to suspension control arms, risking catastrophic alignment damage or bent components. For a vehicle marketed as a wilderness tool, this lack of self-preservation hardware is inexcusable. The 2026 Subaru Forester Wilderness is not a rock crawler. If you treat it like a Jeep Wrangler, you will tear off the plastic bumpers and overheat the transmission. It is an overland sprinter. Subaru designed this system to cover 500 miles of mixed surface, pavement, gravel, washboard, and rutted dirt, faster and with less driver fatigue than any body-on-frame SUV. A Toyota 4Runner will survive the Rubicon Trail, but it will punish you on the drive there. The Forester will float over the washboards at 50 miles per hour, keeping your spine intact and your gear settled. It solves the problem of access, not conquest. If your goal is to find the most difficult line up a mountain, buy a solid axle truck. But if your goal is to reach the remote campsite at the end of a long, deteriorating fire road comfortably and reliably, the Wilderness is the superior engineering solution. It is the honest answer to the soft roader paradox, a car that knows exactly what it is, and more importantly, exactly what it isn't. If you value the physics behind the machine more than the marketing on top of it, you are in the right place. Subscribe to InnoDrive Auto. Drive with purpose.